This is Cory Kerr with kuretake.com, and on today's Illo Talk, you'll see me draw this sketch while I talk about something that's extremely important: taking action, moving forward, moving at all. So many people are terrified to take the wrong step that they don't take any steps. You literally cannot achieve anything until you do something. Remember that you want to go to corykerr.com, that's CORYKERR.com, and sign up for my email newsletter so you don't miss videos like this, illustrations that I do, and other announcements and podcasts. Just go to corykerr.com/email, and that'll take you directly to the email sign up form. There is one thing that if you don't do it and understand it well, you will never succeed, and that is action. People who do stuff, people who take action, people who move forward. When I was in college, I was terrified by the choice that I thought I needed to make. And the choice was, what major? And I really thought at the time, that, my decision in school would ultimately affect and impact the rest of my life. I would be locked into a single course, into a rut, and then I wouldn't be able to alter my course from there. And while the decisions that you make do put you on a path, it's not a permanent path, and it probably doesn't matter as much as you think it does. In fact, my first job out of college, I did a lot of animation, a lot of motion graphics, a lot of graphic design, and I had a degree in communication. That was before that program had much of anything in the way of any visual training, and there was nothing on motion graphics. And the head video editor, had a degree in forestry, and the head programmer had a degree in English creative writing. And the only guy who actually had a degree in something that was related to what we were doing is a guy who had a degree in television cinematography, but his degree was 27 years old. And so what he learned in school was completely irrelevant to what he was doing as far as the principles and the equipment and everything. And he learned tape to tape, and we were at that point in time just transitioning to nonlinear editing in the computer and whatnot. And so getting a degree is important. I think going to school is good, and I never want to discourage anybody from doing that. But doing something is always better than not doing anything. And let me talk about that for a little bit. So I want you to think about a ship. All right, think about a boat, like a big tall ship, like the old school ones that, they used to travel the seven seas with. And there's a large rudder, and that rudder is this giant plank or giant plane that goes vertically down from the back of the boat into the water. As you turn the wheel, that rudder moves to the left or moves to the right. Okay, and that's how the ship turns. It turns on the rudder. And you can move that wheel and swing that rudder back and forth all you want. But if the boat isn't moving, the ship doesn't move. It doesn't turn the ship. And so water has to be moving across that rudder before it can turn, before it can go anywhere, before that rudder makes any difference. And so if you're worried about a direction, but you're not doing anything, you're worried about the wrong thing. You need to start something. You need to get going in a direction. I just listened to a great podcast on this by Sean West on Sean West TV, where he talks about, being paralyzed by the choices. There's an infinite number of choices that you can take, that you can make, and there's an infinite number of paths that you can go down. And going down one path might be the wrong path, but that's the wrong way to look at it. And the fact of the matter is, I've gone down a lot of wrong paths, and going down those wrong paths was super helpful because I was able to identify it as a wrong path, and it eliminated that. And I was able to identify things that I liked or that I didn't like. And some of the most important business practices that I've ever had, that I've ever encountered, were how not to do business. I learned how to I learned a lot of the good things that I know about business by watching terrible businessmen make horrible decisions, and making those decisions myself, and making mistakes and doing those things. And while I would have enjoyed not have I would have enjoyed avoiding those experiences or not having those experiences. What I learned from those missteps and those mistakes and watching other people make those mistakes are infinitely valuable. Um, so really doing something is important. This is why I always encourage people to do a passion project. And it doesn't really matter what your passion project is. It doesn't have to feel important. It doesn't have to feel big. But if you just sit and you just watch TV or you just sit and play video games, and I don't have a problem with TV or video games, but if you don't do anything outside of what you're required to do, if you don't spend your time creating something, making something, writing something, photographing something, drawing something, do something with your time. And as you do that, um, it will take you in a direction. And you'll feel that direction out, and you'll start to be able to feel that water move across the rudder of your boat. And the rudder, you'll be able to steer. So let me tell you a quick story. I changed my major 5 times in college. I was really indecisive. I was just paralyzed by indecision. I was paralyzed by, what if I chose the wrong thing, and then it would ruin the rest of my life, and how horrible that would be to be stuck in a thing, to make the wrong choice, and I wouldn't be able to provide for my family, and I just came up with every worst case scenario that you possibly could, and so I decided, what I'm going to do is I'm going to interview the head of every department, and that I have any interest in, and so I narrowed it down to a handful, and I decided, okay, let's go talk to a few of these people. And at the time, I thought, and I don't know why. I mean, looking back at this, for me personally, this sounds like a terrible occupation. But I thought, what I would really enjoy is marriage and family counseling. Um, and so I went and talked to the psychology department, and I sat down in the guy's office, and he's the dean of the or the chair, yeah, the chair of the psychology department. And I said, why should I do this? And what are some of the options out there and some of the things. And I mean, looking back, this is a pretty bold thing to do, is to kind of sit down as a 22-year-old and say, all right, convince me that I should be in your department because I'm so incredible or whatever. Anyway, pretty cocky, but it was useful. And so the guy said, well, what do you want to do with your life? And I said, I'd love to own my own practice. I'd love to just, set up shop and help people. And he said, well, why don't you do that? And so I'd tell him what could go wrong. Well, this could happen, or this could happen, or whatever. And he said, well, okay, well, what do you want to do then? And so I'd tell him something else, and he'd say, okay, well, we'll do that. And I said, well, this could happen, or this could happen. And after doing that for a few times, he said, you know what? You have become extremely adept at coming up with the worst possible scenario, the worst case scenario in every situation, which is allowing you to not do anything. And that inaction is worse than making the wrong choice. He says, what you have to understand is that God, the universe, however you want to look at it, wants you to succeed. Everybody, that does something is going to go out there, and if they work hard and they work smart, they're going to succeed. And so you have to believe that. And he said, it doesn't really matter what you choose, but what you're doing right now is useless. You've got to move forward. And he said, and it's not that you should plan on your plans taking place and that you'll be able to do something with those plans. He says, what you need to understand is that your plans aren't going to happen. They're not going to come to fruition. But those plans get you moving. And then he said something that has stuck with me ever since then. It was a really pivotal moment for me. I think I've talked about this before. But he said, you need to do something good until that stops working, and then do something else good. And then when that stops working, do something else good. And if you spend your life doing something good, moving forward, acting, then you will have spent your entire life doing good things. And that really stuck with me. And so I decided I'm going to be a psychology major. I really liked how that worked. And that semester, I had some fairly horrific experiences with that. And I decided, that semester really quickly, within a couple months, I do not want to spend 40 hours a week listening to people whine about their problems. I can't hack it. I can't handle that. There's just so many people that just wouldn't do anything about what it was that they were having a problem with. And it just drove me nuts. I wasn't cut out for it. I'm so grateful that I made that decision, even though it turned out to be quote unquote the wrong decision. I'm so grateful that I made that decision because now I know for certain that I definitely do not want to be a marriage and family counselor. That would be terrible. I would hate that. I love that there are people out there that do that. That's great. And I don't want to knock that profession. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that that's a bad profession, but for me, I would have been miserable. And so I changed my major a couple more times and I landed in the communication department. I loved it. I finally felt like I was home and it felt right. And I had been so down so many wrong paths by that point in time that when I stepped onto the road that was the right one for me, I knew it. I recognized it. It felt correct. I could feel that it was what I should be doing. And that feeling, I might not have been able to recognize that feeling had I not gone down the wrong path. And I don't think going down the paths that I went down were detrimental to me. I didn't end up becoming a psychologist. I didn't end up becoming an English major or a writer. I didn't end up becoming, graduating with a degree in art, but later on I got a master's degree in illustration and graphic design from SCAD. And so a lot of those majors that I chose to do, I'll tell you what, I spent 10 years of my career doing marketing and advertising and art direction. And the time that I did spend, even though it was short, in the psychology department, taking those classes really helped me learn about human behavior. And so while I didn't end up doing what I thought I would do, I was doing something good. I was acting and I was moving in a direction. And moving in that direction actually benefited me a lot, even though it ended up being a failure, or a lot of people might look at that as a misstep. It was hugely beneficial to me. And when I went on to, graduate and move on and start taking work, I was able to look at a lot of the things that I learned from all of those different things, and it was very beneficial. And so that's one thing is move forward, right? Now, there's a quote, and the quote is, "A ship in the harbor is safe, but that is not what ships are built for." And that's John A. Shedd that said that. It was later popularized by Grace Hopper, who said President Roosevelt thinks that warships are not built to rust and rot in the harbor. He wants them kept moving so that crews can keep in full practice at their seamanship, gunnery, etc. That sounds like hard sense. A ship in the port is safe, but that is not what ships are built for. She changed harbor to port. And she quoted that and popularized it quite a bit. But that is the point, right? You, as a human being, as a creative person, as somebody who has a drive and a desire to do something more than the drudgery of clocking in and clocking out, and just kind of working for a wage. You want to create something and leave something in your wake. You're a boat, man. You're a battleship. You're a tall ship. And you're not made to sit where it's safe. You're actually made to feel slightly uncomfortable. You're made to feel vulnerable. And that's why you need to do a passion project. And the passion projects are really important. Those passion projects are significant. And passion is a word that gets massively overused. It might be better to say personal project or side project. I use the term passion project just because it is a great way to find your passion. And many of you might not know what you're passionate about. And that's totally okay. Personally, I've found that I'm passionate about storytelling in all of its forms. And if you want to learn more about storytelling, you've got to read Brian McDonald's The Golden Theme. He does another book called Invisible Ink, and I've talked to him on Twitter a little bit about it. Great guy, and he's been on the Paper Wings podcast several times. He's good friends with Chris Oatley. But you need to understand that storytelling is hugely important, and for me, I love storytelling. Right now, I'm focusing on storytelling in a single image. In the past, I've done comics and photography and all types of different things. But there's something that I realized early on. Right, I realized that when I was in college, I didn't have the best grades. They weren't terrible, right? They weren't awful, but they weren't great. I wasn't going to be the valedictorian. I wasn't going to graduate and have a bunch of Latin after my name, cum laude, whatever, right? I wasn't, obviously, since I can't quote the Latin, I wasn't that smart. But I realized that I'm graduating with hundreds of other people that are going to look exactly the same as me, except for their grades are going to be better. And then I looked at the rest of the country and the rest of the world, and I thought, as I graduate with everybody, I'm going to have nothing to differentiate me. And I realized something really early on. I realized that what you choose to do outside of the classroom, what you choose to do that you're not required to do, is what is going to differentiate you from everybody else. If all you do is the bare minimum to get by, then you're just going to be no different than everybody else that is scraping by, than everybody else that is doing exactly what they're told. We don't need robots. We have robots. We can build robots now. So I don't need human beings to be robotic. I don't need human beings to just go through the motions and do the programming and fulfill the minimum requirements of what they're asked to do. That's the bare standard just to survive. But you want to do more than survival. And so what I did at the time is I said, I'm going to start a pattern. And this is my challenge. This is what I want you to do. However you want to do it, I don't care. I don't even care what it is. Where I'm going to constantly be spending a portion of my free time working on a passion project, working on something that I am not currently being required to do at work or at school. And I've spent my entire life after that point, after that decision, creating things and doing things and learning things. And that's how I learned Illustrator as well as I know it. And I'll be launching an Illustrator course here online. You can check out my vector graphics tutorial playlist here on YouTube. I'll be writing an ebook and developing a site that you can subscribe to that has really good tutorials and really good lessons on that. But I just learned that because I didn't have any training in Illustrator. I didn't have any technical knowledge or have any sit me down and show it. What I did is I said, hey, there's this new site called Threadless, and it'd be cool to design some shirts. And I tell you what, I did that for a year and a half. I had a door that I found in my garage and a couple cinder blocks, and I made myself a desk out of those cinder blocks, and I spent my evenings designing t-shirts in Adobe Illustrator. I didn't know what I was doing. I just jumped in and figured it out. And I learned so much through doing that. I learned so much just through doing, the action of moving forward. And this is back before you had, you know, hundreds of people on YouTube doing YouTube tutorials and tons of information out there. And so you had to kind of dig into the internet and figure things out, or just trial and error. I remember getting on the Threadless forums and saying, hey, how do you guys get these tools to work right? And a bunch of people said, why are you using that tool? That's crazy. I use this one, and this is how I use it. And I use this one, and this is how I use it. And I was just talking to people. But I did that for about 18 months. I made a lot of t-shirts, and they looked terrible. They were awful designs. I'm embarrassed by them now. But I wasn't good. I was just starting out. And you don't need to worry about creating amazing things. You should strive for that. But you shouldn't let that stop you that you can't do it right now. And so you really need to move forward. Act. Pick something and do it. Really quickly, some of the things that can be helpful for a passion project is let me talk about criteria really quick. Should be something that you're excited about or passionate about. Or even something that you're like, I don't know, I think I might like this, right? And don't be scared if it's the wrong path, or if it takes you in a different direction or whatnot. That's fine, right? And if you end up doing that and you do that for a couple months or even a couple weeks and you end up just saying, man, I really hate this, you've learned something, right? That's great. Okay, so that's number one, something that you're excited about. And then you need to share it publicly. Austin Kleon is an author that has written several books. One of them is Steal Like an Artist, and the other one is Show Your Work. And they're great books, right? Seth Godin talks about this in the Icarus Principle. The Icarus Deception. And the Icarus Deception is a great book about how we have been trained to live below our ability and to fly just under the radar so that we don't stick our neck out and get hurt. And he's given several of these principles as well. That's a great book. So get a hold of Show Your Work by Austin Kleon and The Icarus Deception by Seth Godin. You need to share it publicly. You need to put it out there. And you'll notice that if you're just kind of dinking around yourself and doing your own thing, there's a level of quality that's a little subpar that you're okay with. because you're not impressing anybody. Nobody's going to see it. It's just you, in your basement doing your thing, right? But as soon as you think, man, if I put this out there, people will see it and my name will be attached to it. Um, that will cause you to think a little bit more strategically. It also causes you to increase the quality and be a little bit more critical of your work, right? And that'll do that. And another thing is it should make you feel a little bit vulnerable. You should be uncomfortable. It should be outside of your comfort zone. It should be something that you want to improve, something that stretches you, a skill that you want to learn or a skill that you want to get better at, or a skill that you're pretty decent at that you want to master. But you should push yourself and stretch yourself. Your passion project should be something that you can do that gets you outside of your comfort zone. And I have a whole thing that I'll talk about in a later thing about the comfort zone, the safety zone. I get a lot of that from Seth Godin's The Icarus Deception, but it used to be, just here's a real brief synopsis. I'll take you through this on a later video, but it used to be that feeling uncomfortable meant that you were in danger, right? That your life was being threatened. It used to be that being embarrassed was life threatening. If you were in a court and you said something that was politically incorrect, the king would just kill you. It doesn't happen that often anymore. I mean, it doesn't, those of you that have access to the internet, it really doesn't happen statistically very much at all. I mean, there are definitely parts of the world where that is still a threat, and that's sad. It's getting better. Um, it used to be that if you felt that rush of adrenaline, that flight or fight, that it was because your life was being threatened. And now that just happens because your life is being stressed. You have a normal stressor. There isn't a saber-toothed tiger that's coming after you. It's just your boss yelled at you. Or you looked foolish in front of your coworkers, or you wrote something that wasn't very good, or whatever. And so it's not life-threatening anymore to feel uncomfortable. And in fact, as a creative, as somebody who's going to create value and tell stories, however you're doing that, you're telling stories through your photography, through your writing, through your illustration, through your design, through your marketing campaign, through through your social media advertising, through your podcast. We're all storytellers. Really go and read Brian McDonald's Invisible Ink and his Golden Theme. Those are just fantastic books on storytelling. And as you're doing that, it should make you feel uncomfortable. It should be a stretch. If you're inside of your comfort zone, that means that you already know everything that you need to know for that activity. And that's a dangerous place to be. In fact, it's flipped now that feeling comfortable is dangerous because that means you're not growing, you're not stretching, you're not moving. And this is a world, this is an economy, this is a situation, this is a society where you need that water moving across your rudder so that you can turn that ship, so that you can adjust, right? If you're already at top speed, wind in your sails, and you're moving forward and you need to make a course correction, you can do that. Just turn the wheel and you're good to go. But if you see that the sea changes and you need to make a course correction and you're not moving, you're docked, you're dead in the water, right? How much safer is the boat, when it's going to be attacked by pirates and you've got some momentum and you can move versus a boat that's sitting in the water anchored because it doesn't know which way to go. So take an action. Do something now. It doesn't have to be the right thing. Don't worry about it whether it's right or wrong. But immediately after I finish here, I want you to sit down and do something. Do it quickly. Do it right now. Don't wait. Don't think about it too much. Don't overanalyze it. Don't say you're going to do it tomorrow. Sleep is the death of initiative. Do it now. And then do it again tomorrow. And then do it again the next day. And I'll talk more about how to choose a passion project. And we'll go more in depth on the different things and the benefits. But, the main benefit is that you will immediately, and it's as soon as you step forward and start doing something that is more than you're required to do, more than a minimum standard, you're immediately above most of the population of the world, which just does exactly what they're told. And they sit back and they're just waiting to be entertained, waiting to be fed, and they never create anything. As soon as you begin creating something, you are already elite. You are already a step above. And so you share that, be vulnerable, and be excited. And that will move you in a direction that's significantly important. Make sure to check out my work. Go to corykerr.com, CORYKERR. You can also sign up for my newsletter so you make sure that you never miss a video or a podcast or an illustration that I do. And you can do that at corykerr.com/email. I'm on Twitter at Cory Kerr. I'm on Instagram at Cory R. Kerr. I'm on YouTube, and you guys are watching this on YouTube now. But all of those are kind of ancillary things. They're secondary. I've also got a new Facebook page, Cory Kerr Art, where you can follow some of this. I'm on Periscope, and I'm gonna experiment a little bit with Periscope and Snapchat. We'll see how that goes. But you can always see what's going on by going to corykerr.com, CORYKERR.com, and also sign up for that email newsletter. And that way you'll just get notified of what's going on. Okay, go do something right now. I'm going to stop doing this. I'm going to stop talking, and you need to start.